Welcome to Missed Opportunities for Good, the podcast where we open up the space to have conversations about trends, campaigns, and cultural moments at the intersection of marketing, advertising, and impact.
Hi, I'm Alana Ficalora.
Hey, I'm Steph Belsky.
We're social impact strategists, colleagues, and friends who are on a mission to revolutionize the industry we love.
Listen, today there's a lot of virtue signaling, greenwashing, cause washing, or companies saying nothing out of fear of getting it wrong.
Whether it's a moment or a movement, it still has to be real. It has to be authentic and aligned with the brand, not just performative. It's about the action being taken that goes along with the messaging.
So we're here to highlight who's doing it well, what could be done better, and how companies can stop leaving money and the potential for real social change on the table.
Our guest today on Creative Conversations is Josie Davis. Welcome to the podcast, Josie.
Hey.
Thank you, ladies, so much for having me. Hi, Steph. Hi, Alana. It's super exciting to be here.
Amazing. Well, we love to start before we do our proper intro with you to ask, why do you do what you do without literally saying what you do?
Whew, this is a tricky one. So I know I did probably a little overthinking on this one, but
Everyone
always does. I think the first thing that came to mind, though, was something I've been reflecting on a lot in the past few months, which is the why always comes back to the people. I've worked independently for a long time, but I'm super collaborative in everything I do. And I think the people always make or break the work. And I'm constantly meeting and getting to work alongside people who are really engaged and excited about what's possible. And then I think I always just relish a good challenge. And for me, if it's been done before, then what's the fun in trying? I guess it's part of my philosophy.
Yeah.
And so what gets me out of bed most days is not always having all the answers and being surrounded by people who are equally, if not more, excited to explore and question and push ideas further.
Yeah.
And always being able to learn from your mistakes and learn from what you're building and your clients and your projects and be able to dive really deep and apply your passion and expertise to the world and create that kind of next level of impact together.
Awesome.
I love it. Share what it is that you do, Josie. So Josie Davis is a creative director, producer, and sustainability leader working at the intersection of climate, culture, and brand to help organizations turn ambition into action. She's the founder of the Curmudgeon Group, a creative agency partnering with sustainability-driven brands to translate complex climate goals and hard science into clear narratives, strategic platforms, and dynamic creative work that resonates across audiences and scales impact. Very impressive. Josie is driven by one core belief that the best way to influence climate is by influencing culture, building trust, integrity, and equity in brands, and in turn, accelerating progress and moving solutions along faster. If that's not going to resonate with our audience, I don't know what will. Josie, we are so excited to have you and to get to know you a bit better.
Thank you so much. I'm glad hearing you read that back to me still resonated with myself. So, you never know. Writing about yourself is the hardest thing in the world.
Quite truly.
I love it. So our first question for you is, what was it that first drew you to impact work?
I think I have to go all the way back to how I was raised. I was raised in a world of just people and family, multiple generations of scientists and conservationists and policymakers, and most of all, just a really incredible exposure to the outdoors in all of its facets. And people who my parents would pull me out of school to go visit family in Alaska and Mississippi and random parts of the wilderness. And
Amazing.
I always thought this was normal for everyone else. And I didn't really realize till I was older that was not normal, even though it should be, right? And teachers would say, you can't take her out of school. She's going to miss class. My parents would say, this is class. This is an education.
Yeah.
Right. And so that level of passion really rubs off on you, and those kind of priorities. And at the same time, I chose a really winding career path in the art world, in production and advertising and music. And over time, I was able to see how those two worlds could intersect and how I could really apply my passion in, the creative world to what I loved from the early age, which was conservation and the outdoors. Yeah. And I think also being a really empathic person, where I just, what always appealed to me was doing anything and everything where I could make a positive dent on the world and on people's lives. And for a long time, that was teaching or working in nonprofits or traveling and doing work in other countries. And then eventually starting my agency, I was very intentional at the beginning of Curmudgeon to work with clients who were purpose-driven, and not necessarily in sustainability, but just purpose-driven. Yeah. And I think I never wanted to work for a client if I couldn't get on board myself with their mission and values. And that was sometimes to the detriment of great money, right? But it was also...
But you didn't sell your soul.
I didn't sell my soul. And I traded... I couldn't let go of that, right? And I think I will say, apart from this question itself, I think the world of purpose and impact has evolved a lot in the past decade, right? There's a lot more companies, regardless of the level of authenticity, have embraced that more and more. So there's more opportunity for agencies and consultants to tap into that and try and leverage that. I want to say yes for better budgets, for all those things, better impact. So it is great. And you can go in and say, how can I help you to make sure you are being authentic and you are being true to yourself, and you're not just doing the cause washing and greenwashing. Yes. But 10, 15 years ago, it was still like the purpose-driven agency was a very new territory to tap into, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Amazing.
And I'll say one more thing. I think travel is a big part of who I am. Yeah. And I know not everyone has the capacity to travel, but travel can mean going to a different part of your city or to a different part of your state, right? Mm-hmm. And I think any kind of exposure that's different from what you normally experience just helps you to open your eyes and see beyond your normal line of sight, and understand what impact looks like from the perspective of someone different, and to start to think a little bit bigger in what you can do and what the world needs or what that can look like, and to take that back and apply it to your day-to-day. So I think that's really impactful, not to reuse the word too much.
Yeah, it's making me think, so we were talking about Chicago earlier. I had a sociology class at Northwestern that they had us, we were all in group projects assigned different neighborhoods. And so we went, oh God, now I'm forgetting the name of the area, but the primarily Polish neighborhood. We had to go to this neighborhood and explore and try the food and talk to people and write, our little sociology report. But it's almost like schools in general should just have kids doing that as part of the experience, whether or not you're in
I mean,
especially
if you're in like an urban environment.
Yeah.
If you're in an urban environment, 100%, right? Because you have so much to see and explore. But I think what frustrates me sometimes, and I hope I don't sound snobby saying this, is people who have the capacity to travel in any way and just choose not to, right? That gets under my skin a lot. Like and so
or go somewhere and then just stay in like the 4-star hotel and don't actually experience
I'm like,
what is actually really, on the other side. Like,
yes. And I think there's a lot of
those people that are working there or what they actually live like, and not the
westernized
version that was brought there.
It stems from fear, right? People are afraid of what they might see or what like contradicts their level of comfort. Right? It's like, okay, I wouldn't travel, but I'm going to stay at this place because it is still what I'm comfortable with, what I know. Yeah. But I can still say that I went somewhere. I think we are very afraid of things that push against what we think is safe and what we think we know and challenge that, right? But the challenge is what makes life worth living, I guess.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, my favorite way to travel is to have that local experience and
oh my gosh. Yeah.
not to do the tourist version, but the like, what is it actually like here? And what is the local culture like? And who are these people? And where do they eat? And what do they do? And that part of the experience is so much more rich.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I met someone recently and he just graduated college, and I've lived in Argentina twice, and everyone's like, oh my God, Argentina is so amazing and I want to go there. And I'm like, well, if you go, one, visiting there for a week is very different than living there. And two, if you live there, just don't hang around a bunch of Americans.
Totally.
Please, like,
great
because
advice. Probably for life, actually.
It's totally for life, right?
Yeah.
It's the same for going anywhere, right? Living as an expat anywhere. If you go and just hang around a bunch of English speaking expats, like what experience are you going to have in that place?
Yeah.
You're putting yourself in a bubble where you're not actually living. Yeah. What's all the effort worth to then experience what you just left? And so it's hard, it's challenging, it's hard, it's uncomfortable. You get lonely and you get sad and all the emotions. Yeah. But in the end,
and then you grow.
But you grow as a person.
Yes.
You know, the relationships you do create are so much more valuable because of that work, that turmoil. So this makes me think of hacks. Can I do a tangent into hacks?
Please, I love hacks.
So, like, everyone has been watching like all of the sad TikToks and Instagram reels about the ending of hacks. And so I listened to a podcast with the creators of hacks, and they were talking about AI and just the strife of like, and they framed it so well. And this does connect to the expat story of turmoil, right? The effort is worth it. The work you put in is worth the result that you get. And for them, it's like, this is, if you use AI, if that replaces creativity, then, you know, what artists want is that struggle to come up with the perfect piece of copy, the perfect production, the perfect script, the perfect concept, right? You go at it again and again and again. And that is what artists are built to do, right? And so if you replace that with AI, they're just going to take all your ideas and pump out one thing. And I've met tech people who say, well, don't you just want it to do it for you? And I'm like, no, I want the strife. I want the creative struggle. That's what makes it worth the reward in the end of coming out with, when you finally land on that perfect thing. It's what's so beautiful is that you realize you're so proud of it because you've spent those hours creating something. And I was so excited to hear them talk about that and say, yes, like this is exactly why artists are so angry about AI, because we're built for that struggle, right? Yeah. So I don't know if that resonates with either of you. Yeah.
It totally does. And hilariously, I'm actually building an AI tool right now. But
but that's a functional approach versus a creative.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. And I do know creatives that, like, I met someone the other day he's a film producer, and he's on the side just for fun. He's making an AI tool for like a food and beverage industry, not related to creativity, but just to teach himself how to do something. So I think it's different. It's not saying you can't use AI.
Right.
But, and it doesn't have an intention, but when you're trying to say like, you know, oh, we don't need artists or creators. Yeah. We just need AI to write for you or to create for you or pump out ideas for you. I'm like, this is, you know, artists, and to say, don't you want your life to be easier? And I'm like, actually, no.
Well,
oh my gosh.
And I think, Josie, to your point, this is why we need creatives building AI and being at the forefront of it, so that it is used as a tool to make us work harder, to make us think smarter, to make us, like, you know, used correctly. You can still have that struggle. You can still push yourself, and it's able to, you know, like that's why creatives need to be at the helm of this, because otherwise we lose control. And I think that, you know, that can't happen. So I'm thrilled to hear that there's a creative out there who's tinkering in AI, because there needs to be more of us doing it.
I think there are. I know
there
all the
certainly
companies like Adobe, for much as people are angry at Adobe right now, are fiddling with it and stuff. But I think it's a matter of, like you say, how do you give creatives the tools with AI to do their jobs better, and not trying to have AI just replace them altogether, right? But that's a huge difference in perspective that a lot of the AI companies themselves are not don't care to think about, right?
Correct.
So
and then there's the water usage problem with all of these.
Exactly.
On that note, what issue area are you most passionate about? And I know that many of them overlap, so it's okay if it's
yeah. I mean,
I can't ever pick one.
Yes, I was going to say I'm the kind of person that gets excited about everything and will say yes to any project, and so passion can often get the best of me, but
you and me both.
So
everyone on this call.
Yes. And I do kind of put a creative lens on anything I do, but sustainability and conservation for sure are the areas that I know I just know really well and do most of my work in. But like you said at the start, Steph, I always say I work at the intersection of climate and culture, right? To me, the two are synonymous. And so when I think about culture, I think about that kind of intersection of affordability and economics and healthcare and access, as much as tradition and artistry and food and fashion and all those things. And that to me is what determines our culture, and what determines our culture is what determines our climate, right? And so versus trying to like only think about climate as a like global warming perspective, right? It's all of these things together. And then trying to place what I do, which is storytelling and creative work, as a lens to help to enable people to do their climate work better. And I also think that sustainability can look like a lot of different things to a lot of different people, right? So there's the climate, work, there's policy, there's land conservation, tribal work, advocacy, ESG, you name it, right? But in the end, all those things flow together, right? So I'm not quite answering your question, but I think that's...
No, you totally are, though.
Yeah. And along those lines, I am very curious about an impactful project you've worked on that touches on one and or all of it that you just mentioned, because I know that those are your areas of expertise. So do you want to share?
Yeah, so I have two that came to mind. Yes, this one's definitely the cooler one, no pun intended in terms of shade. So this was a public art commission that I won a couple of years back with a friend of mine. We applied together, and it was from the city of Phoenix, and it was funded by Bloomberg Philanthropies, which was very cool. And the assignment was to create a temporary public art sculpture that created shade in the community and tackled and brought awareness to extreme urban heat. So it literally was to cool the environment. Oh. And so it was really interesting. Neither of us had ever created a sculpture before. We'd worked in other kinds of other mediums, but not sculpture. So it was a huge learning curve and really fun. We worked with fabricators down in Phoenix, but we really got to understand what the city was grappling with when it came to heat resiliency and the barriers of climate philanthropy when it comes to artwork, especially. Like, how do you merge those two worlds? And we were super intentional. We didn't have a huge budget. Artwork never does. And even though cities think they do, I'm like, this is nowhere near enough money. We are really intentional about working with sustainable materials and reclaimed materials. And a lot of those materials are now going back into the community. We're trying to be as circular as possible with the work. Cool. We got to team up with a really cool company down there that makes this advanced cooling technology in paint form. They apply it to commercial rooftops and whatnot to lower the ambient temperature inside buildings. But we applied it to our sculpture, and we colored it and applied it to a sculpture, and it lowered the temperature underneath the sculpture by 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So it was super, super cool. And so it was really, really neat. Yeah. So their name is Encoat. So you can look it up, ENKOT, and they're just growing by the day. It's really, really neat to see them scale. But I think the best part about it is the kind of effort for the project hasn't stopped. So even though the sculpture came down, there were 10 artists awarded for the commission, 10 pieces, but one of them lives in Chicago and she teaches at SAIC. And she and I have connected, and we are now working on a series of workshops and kind of a framework to help cities and municipalities and funders and artists think more strategically about sustainable funding and investment for end of use for the materials that go into the artwork. So
Cool.
to kind of close that
so cool.
close that like circularity gap. So people think a lot about like, I want sustainable art, but what happens in the end when you take it down and the art just still goes into landfill?
Yeah.
Right. So that happened to our project. So we had all these materials, but we had all this work. We don't have any support to try and have the materials have an actual sustainable lifespan at the end. Right.
Piece doesn't just go live on somewhere else. Oh, so sad.
No, and even if you think about permanent art, right? It has to get repaired, replaced, like things happen. Eventually, it usually comes down. And funding up front to have artists take advantage of more advanced materials. If you want to use recycled polymer, right? That's very expensive, but it is more permanent and more sustainable versus if you have a low budget, you can only use really cheap reclaimed materials. So there's a lot of funding gaps. There's a lot of circularity gaps. So that's a fun kind of side project I'm working on. Yeah.
Wow. And I love how it came full circle too. That you were both commissioned to do this artwork, and now you're working on these workshops and this framework.
Yeah, there was a survey that Bloomberg did, and some of the artists came to that. And there's a lot of feedback from like artists are very open. We're like, here's what you can do better. Give us more money. And there's
number one, more money, please.
And I think some of us said like, we need to have a better plan for what happens at the end, especially when it comes to temporary art. And so she and I connected from that and just kept the talk going. So we're going to debut that workshop at Climate Week here in Chicago this summer.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. And hopefully keep it going. There's New York Climate Week, there's Humanities Festival, there's all kinds of stuff happening.
LA is a Climate Week too
now. LA, so we'll see.
April,
and I think using Chicago as
bring
a
it to
sample.
New York.
Totally. But this is the thing, we want to get input from other cities. So if your listeners are interested, please contact us and let us know what issues you're facing as artists or cities or, public art directors, whatever it is. But the other project is totally different. It was past year, we had a huge contract with a project developer in the non-CO2 carbon credit space, which otherwise is known as super pollutants. So they tackle methane mitigation from orphaned oil and gas wells and refrigerant destruction from stockpiles all around the world, Thailand and other places. They were going through a lot of scaling, kind of planning to scale this past year, and a new CEO came in and private equity acquisition and all these kind of changes happening. And we really helped them to think through and develop a whole kind of communications kind of governance plan and brand framework and architecture, and included thought leadership strategy, brand strategy, earned media strategies, and along with all the design and creative. So new brand identity, executions, campaigns, paid campaigns, all the things, right? And really, how do we set them up for success? When we leave that behind, they can take that, build on it, and start to scale, which they are now. They're hiring people by the day, growing in a great way. But it was a really fun project to come in when they were at a point of this massive transition, and to also learn so rapidly about this industry, which a lot of us had worked in sustainability, but didn't know a whole lot about super pollutants, which are becoming a whole new kind of hot topic in the carbon market. And also the carbon market is there's a lot of doubt and skepticism in there. So people don't necessarily believe like a little bit. So that was really fun to come in there and get your finger on the pulse in terms of what was happening, what's working, the players, the opportunities, the gaps, and try and leverage storytelling to make that work function better. And to hopefully take that knowledge and apply it to future clients. So if anyone's listening who is doing carbon credit work, we'd love to talk to you. That was really, really fun. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, I think that's the best part of our industry too, right? Depending on the projects that come through, you get to go deep into areas that you may never have thought you would ever gone exploring into.
No. No.
And you walk away with this new knowledge, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, whatever it is. But you get to learn so much about the world. And that, in the same sense, almost like you were talking about earlier with traveling, right? You get to explore something totally different and grow and learn in a different way.
Yeah. And it is this whole area. We were like, oh my God, I felt like I talked to the CEO and he was like, how are you doing? And I was like, I'm getting a PhD in what you do. I was like, this is so much fun. Because again, going back to what I said in the beginning, that I love to learn. I just, you're just going so deep. Like you say, Alana, like you just want to pick apart everything, and you're, writing and strategizing and creating and all the things. And you're working alongside people on their end that are really passionate and experts in what they do. Yeah. And so combining your passion and expertise with theirs is just so great to see. And then hopefully, obviously, taking that knowledge and getting to do more of it for other people is the goal. So,
and it goes back to your why of working with smart, creative experts 100%. and different people who can provide different levels of knowledge and wisdom and expertise, so that you can all create something bigger than the sum of its parts.
Yeah. And I will say, like, for that project, what I think I try and do is really build bespoke teams for each project. So I pulled in very specific people who had specific knowledge, being former in-house CSOs or comms leaders for corporations, or had the right creative eye for things. And so we can really deliver the right level of expertise for that company, different than they would for someone who was, who knows, like a CPG brand, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah. You want different, the people and the needs are going to be different depending on what the ask is, right?
Totally.
And so I think that's where we're trying to be very tailor fit to what the client opportunity is, and not assume that every ask is going to be the same.
Totally.
Yeah.
What's the biggest challenge you're facing right now?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think
sustainability being a bad word.
No, I don't think sustainability is a bad word. I think actually the biggest issue is, in parts of the sustainability climate space, it is balancing the creative output with strategic input, and also the creative output with the idea, like, are you going to offset or negate credibility and reputation?
Can you go into that a little bit more, Josie?
Yeah, for sure. So
really,
and there are other things like getting clients and managing the team and all the usual stuff, right? But that's like all those, right? It's like, that's the usual stuff. But I think just anyone watching, you're like, it's all of us to have that problem. Yeah, I think I really want the work, and I think my team does too, to have intention, right? You want everything you do to have clear intention behind it. And I think there's battling this idea of churn and burn work that we see with clients, where they just want to have, like, just do the work and just get it out and just write more stuff. And you're like, well, why? Like, what are we doing? What's the intention for that? What does it have to do with your brand? And what's the rationale? I think that churn and burn request happens more and more because of AI. And I'm like, well, I can just use AI to do that. If you're going to pay me my rate to just use AI to write you a post, then I'll do that. That's a whole other deal. But I think there's an idea that things can happen faster. So you should just make more work happen versus thinking about quality over quantity. Right. And that strategy, like, if you want to create intention and impact and value, that is where strategy comes into play, but also not overdoing the strategy so much and getting caught up in it that the creativity or the comms or whatever it is can't actually come to life. Right. So there's always that balance. And then I think in terms of credibility, that's a huge issue, especially in places like the carbon market where data is key, right? Data and science, like the creative, to be backed by science, but you're trying to tell a story. Not everyone knows what the acronyms mean or what the data means. That's where storytelling comes in. And that's where the human stories help to bring that data to life through emotion. But clients don't always think that that's important. They think that all everyone needs to see is data. And I'm like, we're not replacing your data. We're trying to translate what you do. Give it life,
make
translate
it relatable,
into
turn it
being
from
relatable.
Into
And I think that's a huge battle that you see And anything that's science related, it could be a chemical company or a carbon company, like things that are really grounded in facts, that it's like, you're not trying to replace the facts. You're trying to translate that into something that is relatable. So I think those are huge challenges that probably won't go away. I mean, it's also a fun challenge, but it can be exhausting sometimes when you're battling a client like that. And then I think also it's like another challenge is just taking my own advice, trying to realize that, okay, we're really good at certain things. Let's just reposition ourselves to do what we're really good at. And it's much easier to tell someone else, like, you should do this one thing that you're really good at, but telling yourself to do that, it takes 10 years to heed your own advice. So
where's the challenge? You want to try all the other things too, though.
So a decade later, to like, oh, this would have been so much easier had I done that 10 years ago. So yeah.
So are you transitioning into
I mean, I think we're just
I think we're going to see on the website something.
Well, the website will be different. Okay. We say a little bit about sustainability on the website, but I think it'll be much more focused on how do you really deliver for those sustainability brands that are doing the work in key areas of that space. So it could be the VC, the voluntary carbon market. It could be clean tech. It could also be, sustainable brands that have emerging product lines. It could be brands like, let's say Nike, right? This example, they're not a sustainable brand, but they have lines that are about sustainability. So that's an example where an ad agency doesn't necessarily know enough about sustainability and all of its nuances. And a big consultancy in sustainability doesn't have the creative lens, right? So we come in having that great like intersection of the Venn diagram for both, without the huge overhead. We're really bespoke. We can come in and meet that moment. We have the empathy to really meet, like understand where those leaders are trying to, what they're trying to grapple with. And so that's kind of what we're aiming for, and trying to really fill that gap where those two big players neither of them can kind of solve for both areas, if that makes sense.
That's huge and really exciting.
So we'll see if we can get there, but that's what the summer is in terms of not losing the name and the brand, but just kind of repositioning ourselves. Awesome. And we're working on some new partnerships in the back end. It'll be an exciting kind of relaunch come the end of the summer.
Absolutely.
So we'll see. Speaking
of the partners that you have, I'm wondering, what would your ideal project or collaboration be?
Oh, gosh.
It seems like...
Especially with the rebrand, like the repositioning statement coming, Who are you hoping to call in with the new positioning?
in this next chapter? Let's bring them.
Accountability partners right here for your cheerleaders.
So, I mean, there's my ideal client for myself as a freelance fractional producer or creative director. And then there is the ideal client, I think, for Curmudgeon, right? So I think my dream job is I just want to be a producer, an EP for National Geographic and travel the world and run productions all over the world. That's always been my dream job, right? Like travel, do environmental work.
Then you'd have to move to DC.
I would totally.
I would always based in DC. I feel like their jobs are always based in DC.
Or LA. I know producers who live in LA.
Really? Oh, nice.
Yeah. But I probably live in DC
though.
before LA because I'm not an LA person. But there's like,
I'm offended. I'm just kidding.
I would for you, Alana. I would be for you. But you'd be traveling all the time. You get to go see the world. And I think I am always a producer at my core. And it's even the way that I run my team is as a producer. Like I love being able to pull people together, run a show, see the big picture, and also see the nitty gritty that has to happen. So that's really what I love to do. So that's my personal dream job or something like that. For Curmudgeon, I don't know that I have a client in mind or a partner so much as just like the kind of people we want to work with who really meet that need I said before of being like actually open to creative ideas, like understanding that we come in and you want to partner. Everyone always says you want to partner, which they do, but they want someone who is highly collaborative and says, we're going to bring you great ideas and they're not going to wait or to give you like a 5-year span to say next year, but say, we want the ideas now.
Right. Right.
We also want you to challenge us and say, how can we be really authentic and true to ourselves in terms of work that is going to position us as a leader and be strategic and be thoughtful, but like, get some killer awards. And I'm not an awards person, but if they win awards, that's great.
Yeah.
But be that same caliber of work, right? And we're not limiting ourselves to the possibilities. And I think those are the clients that are hard to find, right? Yeah. I get excited about companies doing really cool work in regenerative food and kelp farming and all these kind of weird things, because that's just cool stuff to tell stories about.
Yeah.
And they don't have a lot of money, but they're just interesting brands. And there's a brand out there that has a lot of money. They want to hire us. That'd be great. But, and there's a lot of cool, innovative stuff happening in that space, right? They're making fashion and fabrics and disposable waste materials for product lines, and all that stuff is both B2B and B2C. And I think there's a lot of interesting stories and ways and kind of fodder for advertising and communications in that world, which I'd love to tap into. Yeah.
Like the Penotex that we were talking about earlier.
And Parlay.
I work with the World Wildlife Fund. I know a lot of people in the global kind of NGO world where those kind of partners to bring into things and help to navigate those stakeholder relationships for big brands. Like I'd love to do that kind of fractional work for people. So I think there's a lot of opportunities.
What's a piece of advice that you would give someone who wanted to incorporate more social impact or purpose, or wants to change the world through their role within working at an agency or in a production company or out on their own?
Oh my gosh. Asking as many questions as possible is huge. Like when I hire someone who's like 20 years younger than me, I'm always like, please just raise your hand and ask questions. People are afraid to be wrong, right? And they're afraid to make mistakes. And I think the biggest thing you can do is realize that's the best way to learn, right? Is by making a mistake and asking questions and then doing it again, right? So not making a mistake again, but learning from your mistakes and trying again, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Ask the question. So
ask the question.
Don't be afraid.
And don't be afraid. And I think if you have excitement about impact or purpose, like think about, okay, what about that excites you? What areas of that excites you? Why does it excite you? And be really authentic to yourself. And I think, I want to say kids these days, they're so young. They're like, they are like turning into my grandmother. I think they are much better about that than I ever was, right? They are so tapped into that sense of impact and purpose because they have to be. The world is so messed up. And everything for them is about like, how do you make impact? And I think they should like challenge, don't be an idiot about it, but challenge your boss, challenge your company. When you're interviewing to go somewhere, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. That's something that people don't realize, right? So when you're looking for a company, all the perks are great, but what's their actual impact? The same way you'd question a brand for their authenticity, ask that about where you work. What are they actually doing? The best people I work for, like work out of their house and have their team and just do their thing because they don't need the big bells and whistles. They just care about the work. And so I think you can set aside all of that shiny stuff and just get down to the nuts and bolts of what you're doing.
I think it's great advice, Josie. And actually, I think about what a disservice it is to the work, to the client, to the company, to the agency, if there aren't enough questions asked, right? And if somebody is trying to figure it out by themselves, then it could be worse. But also, they grow so much more, and even you grow because you're thinking like, oh, I wasn't even thinking about that question before. That's a great question. So I think always encouraging that from younger people is and anybody who's looking to make the world a better place.
Right?
Yeah. Question up.
I'm a big believer that the good ideas come from anywhere, right? So this whole idea of hierarchy and that like you sit in a room, but only certain people can talk is a bunch of BS, right? I don't care if the great idea for a campaign or a strategy comes from the janitor in the hallway. Has lived their own life and has seen things that you haven't seen, right? So always be talking and meeting people and chatting it up with the barista, who you never know where that like spark of inspiration is going to come from.
Exactly.
And you can take that into the next room and be like, hey, you know who I was talking to is so-and-so, and this made me think about this. And as a boss or your new hire, whoever, like those relationships, like you say, Steph, make you a better person, make you learn and think. And so, I don't know, I guess for me, I'm just, whenever I hire someone, like there's no hierarchy. We all do the work. And yes, technically I'm your boss, but we're all part of a team. We're all doing the work together. Yeah. And I think that's what allows the impact to really take off, is when you're not getting stuck in a title, right? Yep. So, yeah.
Well, you've brought us a very juicy campaign, Josie. All puns very much intended. So, before we jump into it, we're going to quickly review our criteria, both for you, Josie, and for our listeners. So, the first thing we always look at is alignment.
Next is partnerships.
Call to action and transparency.
Engagement.
And lastly, optimization and amplification.
With that, if you
Where
can
should
please
we start? Oh, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the campaign that you found that is doing it well or not, to be determined. If you give us a quick summary of the creative, and then we'll link it in the show notes as well. But that way, if anyone hasn't seen it yet, they know what we're talking about.
Great. Okay. So this is a Dole campaign that happened over the course of 2 years during COVID era. So this is part of a 3-part chapter they did on malnutrition. It's called Malnutrition Facts, and there was chapter 1, 2, and 3. What I first stumbled across was chapter 2, which took place in New York, and they took the malnutrition labels that you see on the back of any box, right? And they give you the calories and the sodium and all those things. And they use that to create copy and content that talked about the percentage of people that are dealing with food insecurity or other facts around malnutrition in the New York area. And they put them on the sides of garbage bags that if you're in New York, you throw out your garbage on the side of the sidewalk and it's picked up there, or on the side of garbage cans on the corners of streets. So it was very visible, and people would walk by with their masks on and look at and see these stats around food insecurity and malnutrition. It was great creative, and I think it was definitely an awareness campaign more than an action campaign. It was tied to action in terms of a partnership with City Harvest, and it encouraged people to go and donate food to City Harvest. And the goal was to then feed a certain number of people in New York who were dealing with more insecurity because of COVID. And to also drive people to a website at Dole that had all these resources and tools around how to improve your own behaviors at home to lower food waste and so on and so forth. That's the thing I think could have been done better. So we can talk about that later. The second part was in London. So the next chapter was in London, where they actually created these kind of same malnutrition labels, really massive scale, and they're printed out of ink made from fruit. So they worked with scientists to create this fruit ink and kind of screen printed these huge poster labels and had them up. They paneled these up next to convenience stores known for their junk food and whatnot, because I guess London and England is really bad for junk food consumption. And so
this was taking place in 2022.
I think, yes, the next year. So again, kind of extension of the first part, so the third part of that whole campaign. And again, I think similar thing, it was an awareness campaign. Yeah. They also partnered with a London version of City Harvest, so another food insecurity, food bank type system. And so, yeah, so that's kind of overview of the creative and the campaign. It all launched right after Dole announced their Dole promise around sustainability and all these kind of climate pledges for eliminating food waste and carbon goals and all those things. So it was kind of a way to probably help to expedite and match those goals, which have now been extended. Yeah. So, Steph, I know you have opinions on this.
It's so clever, right? I especially love the ink. I think that's very, very cool. I also wonder if that money could have gone that they paid the scientists and the experts to develop this ink, if that could have gone straight to the
like
the
eliminating
food drive or whatever, right?
Yeah, or their climate goal, which we looked at earlier, which is to eliminate all food waste from landfill or fruit waste from landfill.
But also, if you just develop this technology to make this ink, are you using that ink anywhere else with the food waste that you just made? So you've done this. So where else can you be printing things? Can you bring this technology or public source this technology so it can be used in all these other places that there's ink being used that's not great for the environment and for everything else, right? There's so many conversations
100%.
about that all the time. So why not
use this
shift the
printing?
industry so that you can utilize that resource? I think that's one of those things that you hear comes up a lot, right? Even especially speaking of awards, like things that when it can, right? It's like somebody developed some really cool new technology or some really cool product
then what?
to solve this problem because they've identified this problem, and then they made a case study video and presented it at Cannes, and then it never goes anywhere. And you're like, cool, you might have won a lion, but like, did you help anyone? And so,
and that's the thing. It's like it's very short-sighted. Yeah,
it's all very cool. So what else can be used? Are you now using that ink on your packaging? Very simple. You keep it in house. Are you using it on the displays you're bringing to the stores, or when you do events, or in the factory when you bring people? Where else can you use it, even if you don't public source the knowledge? How do we then just up-level it for the next year, like once you've created the resource?
It's a really fair point. And I think I also read somewhere online that I think some of the criticism was that they were promoting like, oh, how amazing, all this fruit on this poster. But then scientists were like, actually, the percentage of your daily value of fruit from this poster is like 0.0001% or something. So
whatever's left of it. And that's where it's good to pay attention to the data. And like story didn't match the data. I mean, that would be another funny thing in and of itself.
It's a really good point, Alana. I think there's like I think it's
that goes to your data and story conversation earlier as well, right? Where you're like, where's this balance between the two, and that challenge to like, the story of that is very cool.
Yes.
But then you have the scientist over here being like, the data doesn't totally match up with the story you just told. So I think that is kind of an interesting point. It makes for a cool creative and conversation to get started, but then how do we?
Yeah, and I think it did. The reviews I read were that, yes, it drove awareness, right? And it sparked conversation, which everything that was sparks conversation. That's great, which is why it won all these awards, because it sparked conversation. But
because it used trash as media,
obviously is amazing, so thoughtful. Oh, there was something, where did I read that? Well, they used trash as media, and I was like, actually, they didn't use trash as media. They used a trash can as media. I was like, the trash is not the media.
Let's call it spade a spade.
Also, some of the pictures look like they're literally put an extra trash bag with a sign on it next to the trash can.
So they're causing more waste.
And also, did you make that deal with the trash company to be able to put those posters up, or did you like
for sure.
put them up? I don't know. I don't know. It could
they
go
call
either way.
They called it a guerrilla campaign, but Dole wouldn't do it. They would, of course.
Yeah, you have to like, because it's also on like trash trucks and stuff as well. So they had to have conversations with the haulers.
Yeah. But I also think, what really got me was like, I was like, it's not on trash. It's not a trash can. It's not trash. So it's like, I mean, it'd be great if you had a banana and you had a little malnutrition label on the banana. That'd be awesome. So there was
super cute.
I think there was a campaign that someone did, not in the US, that had labels of some sort like that, like on the actual food about food waste. And I'm blanking on where it is, and I probably have it in like a WhatsApp chat somewhere. But that literally placed it like on the product.
I mean, it probably was about, I would guess it would be a good campaign to about water usage, because the amount of water that's used to grow food is insane, right? And people don't realize what it takes to grow an avocado. So it makes you more thoughtful when you eat avocados and almonds. Yeah. People are always like, have more almond milk. And I'm like, do you know how much water goes into having almond milk? Yeah. It's not bad, but the sustainability level of almond milk is not necessarily great, right? So you're replacing things with something else that also isn't wonderful. But people don't want to know They don't want to know. So they just want to assume that it's better. I think what caught me about this campaign is that they're like, just don't tell me. And I just want to know what's better. So,
because it becomes like, and to some people, I think they just get overwhelmed, right? Because it's like, well, then what am I supposed to eat if this is wrong with this? And now you're telling me that oats are bad, and no. They're like, well, what do I do? And it's like, well, then you have to like life cycle assessment each of the things and figure out which is least bad.
There's like the barista milk, the regular milk, the vanilla milk, the skim milk, the oat milk. It's like, what? It's like you just have a whole scale of what's better.
Totally.
If you're listening to Starbucks, we have some ideas.
Yes. If there's not, we should make a meme and we should send Starbucks. I think what got me about this campaign is the lack of, and it ties to what you said, Alana, it's like the lack of behavior change, right? That is definitely an awareness campaign. Maybe that's all they were going for. But I'm like, okay, where is the actual... They keep saying you want to change behavior, want to change people's eating habits and whatnot. I'm like, you're not. People don't care. They just want to go home and still dump food in the waste. And you're not working with, you mentioned this over our email chat, they're not working with composting companies. They're not thinking about all of the resources they gave, which I looked them up and they're good resources, but they're buried on their site. And I'm sorry, nobody is going to look at a hashtag and then scan. There's nothing to scan. There's no clear call to action. It's like, look at the hashtag, and no one's going to look to your website.
Right.
Website is the actual resources in the website are buried. So you get to the website. So all of that back end stuff that is the actual action you want them to take was not accessible. Not accessible. And so I think you're doing all the beautiful campaign stuff up front. The creative is cool and award winning, so on and so forth. But you're losing out on the actual behavior. And I feel like that's a huge negative check in my mind.
Josie, and to your point on the resources too, even on the waste reducing, like their recommendations for the zero waste guide. Well, there's also a typo, but the recipes are like an extra space anyways. But in the recipes, there's 2 recipes included. This goes back, I feel like, to all the conversations we've had about Hellman's and their conversations on zero waste too. The waste reducing recipes, the first one is frozen strawberry lemonade. None of these things are scraps. 3 cups of lemonade. So we weren't making it from
lemonade,
scratch.
Alana.
Then it's Dole frozen strawberries, Dole pineapple chunks, Dole pineapple juice. Where's the scraps? And then 1 pan chicken thighs with fruit. Again, this is just a recipe. There is nothing on here that is using your scraps piece. Whereas you would think that a way to, it's like, what's the dried fruit company that makes the dried fruit out of the ugly produce? I think it's literally called ugly produce.
Dole. Yeah. It's Dole.
Does Dole also do it? But they should, right? It's like, if you want to do something with your food waste, there are so many literal products that you can take to make your dried pineapple rings that my daughter's obsessed with.
I was going to say, make jewelry out of them. I don't know. Like make edible.
But that does make me think to the point of the ink, there is this brand that makes paint out of food for kids so that they're not using the chemical-based paint when they're babies. And so, of course, I was buying all this powder food paint for Michaela when she was little, whether or not it works fine and you pay way too much for it. But I was like, this is good for the environment and it's better. But make kid paint, partner with Crayola, because their kid paint smells like chemicals. You could utilize this in new way. I don't know. I think there's like an innovation you could take here, which, obviously goes beyond the marketing department, or even in their recommendations about knowing your labels and when sell by and best used by are. When you volunteer at the food bank, they will tell you, they have their own recommendations, and maybe legally as a company, Dole can't actually put that out there and say your sell by could actually be used by this, or your this by can actually be used by that.
Yeah.
But it's very vague recommendation. Yeah.
I also think about, Josie, what you were talking about earlier with your sculpture, and how are they getting rid of, how did they get rid of these activations of this trash can media?
I thought about that. I was like, this is all
was
trash.
It compostable?
This is all
was it
make paper out of your food
thought
waste.
About. Yeah, it's just I think there's not a consideration of circularity in this project, right? And so, which I don't want to let them off the hook, right? Because they shouldn't. They're a huge company and they should. I was like, but there's no but.
But it sparked a conversation.
It sparked a conversation. So
It's
that's
also like
all that matters, is that it sparked a conversation.
You're also having two separate conversations about food waste, right? Because I think there's also a difference between the guilt and there are people that don't have food and you have food and you're just throwing your food away. So there's your food is perfectly fine. You don't need to throw that away yet. You can donate it conversation. And then there's the conversation of like, this is no longer edible because of 14 different reasons. Maybe you left it in your fridge too long. It's gone bad. It's bruised, whatever. And what happens to that type of food? And so you can donate food to a food bank conversation is very different than I made dinner, but I didn't use this part of the broccoli. So what can you do with that? Right. So they're not addressing that piece of food waste in a house. I think a lot of that is too, like, if you are eating fresh fruits and vegetables all the time, you're cutting off a lot of pieces of things as they would be in a Dole factory when they're making juices and whatever else, right? Like, have you ever tried to juice? The amount of fruit and veggies you need to put through a juicer when it's not literally breaking down the fibrous parts of the pieces, right? I was having this conversation the other day of like why we all stopped juicing, but you end up with this huge amount of the stuff, which is actually the better for you stuff. So like what you could do with that is very different, right? Which is like on the internal Dole side, what they can make with things that are not actually literal bad fruit versus, I don't know. So there's like so many levels of the conversation and they went for a very like surface level version, I feel like.
They did. Yeah. Which probably
helpful,
for them was like, it's, they're like, what's going to be the easiest story narrative to get across to the masses, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like the low hanging, yes, no pun intended, right? But I also think about the ink campaign where it was that one was, I think, versus the New York one, I think was about food waste, right?
Yeah.
I think the London one to me was more about actual malnutrition, right? Yes. And like you're choosing to eat a Twinkie, if they still exist. Do they still exist? I don't know. Versus
they'll be the only food that exists at the end of the world
because they don't ever expire.
They don't go bad.
They don't go bad. You can have one from like 1980 and it'll still be good. So and you're choosing to eat that Twinkie instead of eating Dole, right? And so, and I do think there's also obviously the brand element where, like you said, you go to their thing and it's like, don't just eat any pineapples, eat Dole pineapples, right?
Yeah.
Don't just eat any fruit instead of that Twinkie, eat Dole. And so it's obviously, a stunt that is a brand stunt. It's heavily promoting Dole products as
which
the
they
best
have
products,
to do.
which they have to do. But I think, and it was funny. I watched the video they made for the ink campaign and everyone's just like walking right by and going to the convenience store. It's like,
oh, you put it next to a vending machine, so now I can see the vending machine more clearly. Thank you so much.
Everyone's like getting their bad food and then coming out and being like, oh, that's interesting, open my Twinkie.
Right. It's like, why not put out a basket of fresh or maybe not fresh Dole fruits and veggies so that you're encouraging healthier choices or like.
I will say when I've gone to the coffee shop and the second, I think I was at some coffee shop, they had bananas. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm so more likely to get a banana than I am a croissant if they have banana. I know that it's better for me and I actually am fine with the banana versus a triple berry scone with icing on it. I don't really need that, but I will eat it if I'm hungry and it's all there is to eat, right?
Totally.
But if you offer something better, why not have a cool vending machine?
I was going to say, just on the other side next to like you have your label, the vending machine with the fruit and veggies.
Fruit on it. And but I just think there's, I feel like having a sign is a really hard way to change behavior. It's bringing awareness, but that's such a high service level to try and, I think what was a disconnect was that their goal, I have the press release in front of me, was to try and change behavior, to make people want to do these things. And I'm like, okay, but the way you're doing it is a huge fail. It's just like,
and look, and I get that behavior change is hard and it's a multi-step process, but then it's like, what is the follow through then over time? If this is your first step and you want to build awareness, but then how are you pushing this conversation forward throughout the year on your socials, in your customer engagement, you know, what 400,000 emails do you send people who sign up for your email list? How are you talking about this in the supermarket when people are buying your product? Does it continue in there? Where are these conversations going? And on your product, are you then having a QR code to reduce food waste at home or to eat healthier, or the recipes in that sense for the healthier eating and stuff as
There
well?
wasn't even a QR code on the
it wasn't a QR code.
labels.
There wasn't a QR code, and I just think in any of them, that's why it caught me. I was like, with CTA, have a clear call to action, and there's not, there's
QR
nothing,
code
there's
link, anything,
anything. And I was like, you could have a cool, instead of the copy, part of the copy could be, why don't you put a recipe on the actual thing? If you want to have that, print out a recipe. And like you said, Alana, have it actually be a recipe, not a Dole cheat recipe that's just for food, but an actual recipe on how to put a recipe where you can say, here's all the food waste you're going to get from this convenience store. Use it to make something cool. You know, I think they're trying to tie it so closely to their products too, which is fruit, which I get. But if you're dealing with food waste in general, it's a bigger story. It's not just about fruit. It also is about just what comes from that convenience store. There's all of the junk that happens from there. So I think they're tackling a huge issue. So I give them credit for trying to tackle this overwhelming
to talk about it at all.
Topic. Talk about it all, right?
Because they could have huge backlash. They could have, but they're going for it. They're still sparking the conversation. And that is the first step.
And I do think they did, like, the creative was good. It was definitely authentically tied to their sustainability goals and their efforts. It's not like Dole has no environmental aim and they're just putting out this huge campaign. I think the alignment is there in terms of their trying to do what they do. And they had good partnerships and all those kind of things. But I do think the follow through was what was lacking, and the level of access to resources was a bit like not quite there. So
to what we were talking about before too, in terms of their goals of eliminating their fruit waste and where they are now and how they've shifted that. It is interesting because to support the work that they have been doing, as we were talking about the Peanut-X, they are repurposing pineapple leaves and they've found a way to turn that into vegan leather. That's very cool. They do upcycle their ugly produce in Thailand and Japan for overripe fruit into healthy snacks and powders and juices and stuff like that. So they are finding a place for that. They also are using their fruit and organic waste as biogas fuel for some of their facilities. So that's probably part of their plan. So that's a cool element. And then for their packaging, I found something that said that they're using oxyfoam, which is 100% recyclable stretch film for their pallets in Latin America. Again, it's a global company. So why is it in one region? But hopefully maybe that's a test market and then it'll expand everywhere. So it's nice to see that they are doing some work in this space, and it seems like they're trying, which we give them credit for, but we could obviously sit here all day and come up with more ideas. So if they want us to help them on their next campaign, we got a team here ready to go.
We're here. I know. Come on, Dole. Yeah, it bothers me when they're saying, oh, we're going to do all this stuff by 2024 or 2025, right? Just be more transparent about what you are doing. Like you're saying, you can find the actual efforts being done and say we're ongoing. And they do say here on their report from 2022, I guess it was, like, we acknowledge that we don't currently have all the answers. We are committed to getting there, right? Which is fair. And you're like, you don't have you're global. You should have all the answers. So, but
also, they're 3 years behind. I know sustainability reports take a long time, but their most recent one is 2022. We're in 2026, almost halfway through.
Yikes.
Wow.
Which I know they take a long time, but it's interesting to that point too, of even what we were talking about earlier, and what we talk about a lot too, is it seems like between the data and the storytelling, there's that disconnect. The marketing department and sustainability department and social impact department, there's a disconnect. Somebody came in and was like, oh, here's a really cool story. Let's talk about that piece, without maybe fully understanding the full breadth and picture of what they do and how to communicate that and what resources they could provide with it. It seems like it might not have been a cohesive conversation across all departments to the maximum abilities.
I do see a report from 2023.
Oh, where'd you find that?
on their website.
I'm on there. It's like literally on their page, on their commitment, and it talks their sustainability report section. It says 2022.
Okay. I just Googled sustainability reports Dole 2020.
But to your point of finding things on the website, if it's not where the other ones are,
Right.
where is it?
Then it's inconsistent.
And it's inconsistent. Yeah.
Oh, so funny.
Well, I think, okay, so what do we think about this here's the question. They did this campaign. If this is the best that a brand can do, for instance, is it worth doing it all?
Yes.
Oof.
I still think it's
yes.
worth doing something because they're at least having a conversation.
Yeah.
What's the other canned fruit company? Del Monte or something?
Oh,
Did they have anything?
No.
At least
No.
if you're looking at your category, they seem a little bit better, at least compared to the other person that you see all the time. You're doing something more. Could they do more? Sure, always. Are we always going to sit here and be like, here are some more ideas? But at least they're starting the conversation, and it can be a campaign that can grow over year. You can continue to go deeper. It just becomes, are you choosing to invest in that space? Because also this messaging still has business value for them. And there is business
1000%.
value to them continuing to be more sustainable with their products and utilizing them across, whether it's incorporating them into a new product so that they don't waste that food, or putting it back into the energy system to fuel their factory. It only benefits them in the long run. So at least starting from somewhere is helpful. But if you just continue to base level, not shift anything, then what are you doing?
Yeah, it's a given. The next awareness campaign is not hitting any harder on people, then you have an issue, right? If all they're doing is kind of keep that status quo of awareness.
Yeah.
I do think it would have been nice to have them work, to see they were working with cities on a more ongoing basis.
Yes.
And maybe they were, but I don't see any news of that. That like, what were they doing with the city of New York, with the city of London, to really change just like entire programs there, or like work with schools, work with public schools around waste or food or those kind of things. I think there's a lot of missed opportunities for partnerships that could have been tapped into. That seems to me like low-hanging fruit, right?
And if you're looking at, because again, like we were talking about, there's different parts of this conversation that they're having. For example, with the composting portion of it, right? In LA, I was working on a project with Earth. We were trying to get more Angelinos to use their green bin for their food waste because the trash haulers in the city weren't putting out not correct information, but their messaging wasn't working. People were not adopting a new behavior. But we had people generate all these ideas through the first LA Climate Week when we hosted an event, and we had some great creative ideas, but then there was a lack of funding because none of the haulers wanted our ideas because they thought they were doing great. But if a private brand like Dole could come in and say, oh, we actually are trying to help people adopt the behavior of food waste. Let's partner together and utilize your idea and put our branding on it and whatever, and get the messaging out there and help shift the behavior change. Amazing. Getting kids involved because they believe on it. Such a great idea. And then even with the obesity side of it, with the healthy food piece, right? Again, there's so many of these like healthy eating programs within schools that you could sponsor, support, bring your messaging into, give resources to schools, just build resources and distribute those to schools, after school programs. Our school has the Edible Schoolyard program, which is all about healthy eating. And again, I think their social impact team is pretty small. So maybe they just need time to grow and be able to leverage these opportunities.
Well, but again, I think
so much.
there's all these conversations happening, right? And I'm certain that Dole is very siloed in their departments. And so being able to bring together the business cases of why this is important, and not just about being a good company, but also moving their bottom line, and how these partnerships can actually fuel their business and move things forward. And all these things that we've talked about are all components of the business that can make real change. And so, I think there's a bigger issue here at play. And that really goes for a lot of these huge corporations that are trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is like, if you say you're trying to make the world a better place, that's such a cliche term for a corporation to use. It's like, what does that really mean? How are you actually doing that? And what are you doing to follow through on that? And yeah, so I do love your idea, Lana, at the beginning of just, you put these scientists to work, and then what? You have this ink, give that to art programs at schools, give that to, there's 1,000 ways you could have used that technology, and you still can use that technology, right?
Yeah. Have it just used even for Climate Week in London, like just base level. Like,
yeah.
I did have one thought when I first saw the video. I was like, Indigenous people have been doing this for centuries.
Yes. Scientists. This is just like, that's how they dye cloth. That's how everything
I was like,
exists.
wow. And the scientists were like, we spent all this time figuring out how to make this. And I was like, I've been to Mexico and a guy just whipped out some flowers and made me a piece of art. I was like, this is not anything new. This is, So,
well said, Josie.
What can we learn from the land? Let's go out and travel and learn from the local people, from the Indigenous communities around the world and what they've been doing for centuries.
Yeah. I kind of wish they had some nod to that of just like, we're learning versus saying like, we just realized overnight that we can make art from science. Yeah. I was like, wow, that's a very like whitewashing moment there. So
I think you just nailed the greatest missed opportunity for good, Josie.
100%.
Especially as a global brand who works in a lot of third world places and like Brazil and Africa, all over the world. I'm like, wow, like you're like, that's so
nailed it.
Big missed opportunity.
Big missed opportunity. So thank you guys so much. This is really fun.
Joining us. Thank you for bringing this campaign to dig into. This was such a fun conversation. Where can we send our listeners to learn more about you and your work?
For now, they can still go to the Curmudgeon website and just keep in mind that it is under construction, but they can find us there, or they can find me at josieelizabethdavis.com.
Perfect. We'll link both.
Yeah, great. Thank you guys. And my LinkedIn is always fine. So
that is what we will include.
Yes, perfect. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Josie, for helping us shine a light and learn from those who are doing it well and reducing the missed opportunities for good.
We want to hear from you. Let us know, what campaigns are you seeing that are doing it well? Who would you like to see us interview? And what campaign would you like us to audit?
Thank you to our listeners, to our new YouTube subscribers, to our Substack readers, and to everyone who is on our mission to revolutionize the industry that we love.
Missed Opportunities for Good is a production of Alliance for Impact and Love of Good.